Hello everyone! So let's start with our first class of the third weekend. This is gonna be just on YouTube live, so you can click on the YouTube. I mean, you're already here if you see this. So we will put on the video after this. It's gonna take, I think it's a small thing, so it's gonna take about 10 to 15 minutes. After that, we give you 15 minutes to kind of think about it, train at home, and then we meet up in the Zoom in about like half an hour after we've started, and then David and Catia can answer some of your questions if you have any, and otherwise we just keep having fun in Zoom. All right, let's go and watch it.
Hello guys, Catia here.
David, welcome to this brief video around the very broad topic of posture. In this video we will try to explore different ways of holding oneself's body so that we can feel more comfortable when we dance, so that we can prevent future injuries, and also so that we can improve connection with our partners by exploring different opportunities within ourselves. Here we go.
So the first exercise we want to do is to be able to find a comfort position for our feet on the floor. So let's try to find the width that puts our feet right below our hip bones and not opening more. Some of us might have the tendency to open our feet at the width of our shoulders. Let's try to avoid that. Try to find a position that you feel that your hips are really aligned with the toes, especially between the big toe and the next one, okay? So trying to find this very comfortable standing position that your weight is really divided in both feet. Then if we go to the side, we can go over to talk about different articulations that we have in our lower body. And the first thing we will do is try to bend a little bit the knees. Try to bend a little bit the knees. And this is a very normal Lindy Hop thing to have the knees bent. What we would like to focus in this part of the class is on how our hips correlate with what's happening on our knees. So we'll try to move our hips backwards instead of down. If you notice, we're just having the knees bent and the hips a little bit back without trying to tilt the hip. We'll go in further detail in this afterwards. So when we have that, if you notice, probably what's happening to you is that you'll have your weight more on your ankles, okay? So what we want to do is to try to use your upper body going a bit forward, so you feel your weight transferring from the back part of your feet to the front part, okay? So if you want, you can even try to see how moving your hips or how moving your upper body can make the weight transfer in different parts of your feet. When you explore this, so moving the weight on your feet and having the hips more backwards or more forwards, and having the knees more bent or less bent, we want you to try to coordinate all of this to make sure your shoulders are kind of aligned with your knees. I cannot see them now. And having your ankles stabilized and your weight mostly in the front part of your feet. When you feel comfortable with this, try also to shake a little bit your legs, so you feel that if you're having too much tension in your lower back. With that, try to start to bounce a bit and try to feel if you feel relaxed. If you feel that you're doing more strength with some parts of your body than others, probably that can be happening if you have a tendency to use more muscles than the others. But in general, what we want is that all the muscles are working the same. So there's not one that will be more tired than the other one. Okay?
All right, guys, very important moment of exercise and self-feedback time. So what we want you to do is to get a camera or your cell phone, film yourselves sideways like we do right now, and we want you to just go boom, ba-doo, ki-doo, 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 ka-boom. So pause this video, film, come back when you have that done. All right, now that you have your video and you watched it, what we're gonna do is we want you to re-watch it while we talk about some common approaches to what we discussed that are, for the purposes of this video, suboptimal. So let's start with the first one, which is producing rotation in your hips. So throughout this exercise, we want you to find what you will define as your own neutral position, but we do not want you to either rotate your hips forward nor backwards. So the hip stays in the same place, it's just rotation. So you can, some of us, when you see this like more, let's call it flat hip posture, think about rotating the hips backwards. This will create extra tension in your lower back and immobility in your hips. So in an example, you get that. Cool, so neutral position, here we go.
Cool. Another thing that is very common to happen is to think about just going down and having your knees projecting forward. So all of your body is really straight. You're going up and down and just your knees are working. This can produce a lot of strain in your ankles and not a lot of mobility in your hips. So trying to find a solution for this is to release your hips a bit backwards, like we talked in the beginning of the video, and trying to compensate the weight that you're putting backwards by moving yourself a little bit forward on your upper body. Okay, here.
In that case, the weight is brought from being on the ankles to being brought in the front part of the foot.
Exactly.
Third case, which is sometimes common to see, is people see this approach of basic posture into creating what we will call a bow. So we think, some of us will think about this, which is not exactly the same thing. Projecting your torso forward while the hip stays in place is a bow, right? We're not looking to bow, we're looking to bring this back, and this is trying to compensate. So most of your head and your shoulders kind of stay in the same position while this or goes a little bit forward, but it's not an action from here, it's not this, it's the hips going backwards that brings our shoulders forward so that we can counteract that movement of the hips backward. Cool.
So then we can have a more balance between hips going back, upper body going forward, and in this way you can have a more balanced posture and not so strain any parts of your body.
Go watch the video, try to spot these three common cases if that is the case.
Okay guys, so let's try to put this instead of just on the place, just moving a little bit with steps and triple steps. You decide, you can even have your own music playing. What we will show you now is how we would like you to experiment this and how it looks like if we are doing one of the 3 different habits that we showed before that we want to avoid for this video. So if you want to follow us in this, would be something like just triple steps and walks. You do whatever you want, but trying to concentrate on your nice posture, that you're comfortable, move around.
Again, the idea is that you film yourself while doing something like this. And try to spot those three common things that happen often. So if we change what we are doing to habit number 1, which is the idea of tilting your hips backwards, you get a little bit of that. Right? So by tilting the hip, all of this becomes way more immobile. Now if we go to situation number 2,
which has the knees forward, and not so much mobility, you'll have something like this. So your weight is more in the back.
Now if you move to case
Very tiring.
if we then move to case number 3, we are having the tilt forward, which is this. We do see the weight is being too much projected forward by bowing. Alright? Go.
So pick up your cameras again, film yourself, use some music, it's much nicer.
Yep.
And then look at the video and try to find if you see one of these 3 habits, or if actually you have a very nice posture and you're being able to implement all of the things that we talked before. If everything is very easy for you now, just try to do it with a partner. Try to film it, do it again, everything, stepping up to challenge, having another person in the picture.
Wow, that was so much fun. Thank you, David and Catia, for this video. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna head over to Zoom. David and Catia are gonna be there, and they can ask, you can ask them questions, and you know, if you have anything, or we can just train together a bit. So head over to Zoom, we're gonna post the link, and see you in a bit. Nice. Der Markus ist schon da.
Ich glaube, jetzt da noch.
Von mir aus könnt ihr auf Zoom
Hello.
starten.
Yes, cool. Das wäre... Sollen wir jetzt über den Ton?
Der Ton kommt über mich und wenn ihr könnt das Bild im Moment lang für euch nehmen, bis ich parat bin.
Hello! Apparently,
hello.
we were informed that you can already hear us.
Hello. We're not so professional, but yeah,
Yes.
we do our best.
Right, when we are not silent anymore.
Nice, cool. Yeah, I mean, thanks for joining, everyone. Yeah, if you have questions, just go for it. You can unmute yourself and ask them, or you can ask them in the chat, or we just keep this space open and you can train a bit.
So maybe when somebody wants to say something, you can wave your hand. I don't know if you see this sign or clap or something or thumbs up. So
Cool. No questions?
Can we also ask a bit, not exactly from the class, but kind of related to the class, maybe? Or put to posture, let's say to posture.
Let's go for it. Go for it. We are here to talk. We love talking and sharing.
I mean, it was yesterday we were teaching solo jazz, and we did kind of, how can I say, a lot of shim sham steps and tacky annies. And in the end, one came to me and asked if she's doing something wrong, if her knee hurts or she can feel her knees. I'm not sure if you have any tips. Maybe it's the shim-sham step and the takiani who are a bit harder, so maybe that was a factor. But otherwise, I'm not sure if you have any tips.
No, there's always a lot of causes behind those situations. I mean, that person could carry some kind of inflammation or a pre-injury that it always needs to be checked before giving any specific advice. But did she develop it during the class or after the class? Was there a difference while she was doing it, or was it? Did she get the symptoms in the end of the class after she did the class?
She didn't exactly say when it happened or if it was immediately after class or during. I would just assume that it kind of developed during the class, but that's just an assumption. And she didn't mention anything that she has knee problems in general. So.
If it doesn't, if there is no precondition for that person to develop a specific kind of inflammation or injury, there's always the case there are some people that put themselves in the position, especially when they're doing, for example, taekwondo is a good example, where there's a lot of stress in the front muscle chain instead of the back muscle chain. So let me see if I can put this a little bit more by way. So whenever I have a lot of my weight forward, and I feel that there's more stress or more tone having to be produced in the front part. So we have the front chain and the back chain, and you can put yourself in a position that if I do that all the time, if I do taekwondo like this and I'm super backwards and my knees are forward, there will be a lot of power having to be generated in these muscles, and they tend to propagate into the knees. So if it isn't something that was there before, I would always ask, how do you feel? Which part of your body do you feel it's working more? Is it more like the front part of your legs or the back of your legs? Is it the front part of your belly, or is it your lower back that's working more? And if that person does tell you that he or she has an unbalance in that situation, then you can look at how he or she is positioning themselves during the motion. Then you can go about that idea. But if it's always something that you need to take into account person by person, I mean, because everybody's biomechanic is so different, and like how much mobility you have in the joints and how much elasticity you have in your muscles is so different from person to person. The proportion of the bones is so different that it's hard to tell before. But yeah, that's always a really good question. Like, do you feel any part of your body that it's not the joints? Do you feel any part of your muscles working more than the counterparts of those muscles? If that happens, usually you can help the person reposition themselves so they don't feel as much strain in that specific area, or at least they can redistribute it a little bit more evenly throughout the rest of the body. But if she or she persists with those kind of symptoms, I would say it's important to address that. If he or she feels that during class, that is something I would address on the spot as much as possible, because you don't want to have injured students. It's for me, it's a no-no. Generally.
And also maybe she needs to work on these muscles. If they are not strong enough, when you're doing too much of this, they can impact on your knees because it's not strong enough. So, for example, if she squats and if it's too painful or she cannot do that, of course, if you're doing takianis, then you will feel it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Now, there's always people that I find that the knees are always very, very sensitive, and they use most of the times, and a lot of specialists will tell you, are symptoms of something else that's happening in the body. So the knee is it's just a one-way joint, so it doesn't have, it's not like the shoulder has a lot of directions. So, and it does have a lot of protection around it. So most of the times when you have symptoms, is reflect of something else that's happening in the body, usually in the feet or in the lower back. So it's always, you always have to take into account that maybe it's not the knees, although the person does feel it in the knees.
Cool. Thank you so much. Do we have more questions? General questions or questions for the class that you just watched? Who is talking? Ah, Katja is talking. Okay. Cool.
And also, if you like, you can always, if you have a camera, you can always put it up, put the camera on, and we are seeing you practice, so we can still give some tips because visually, there's a lot we can see and ask.
Oh, nice. Cool. That's awesome. I mean, you can just ask or dance. Maybe our participants from Sweden have a question. Yeah, I know. Nah. All right, that's fair too. Cool. I mean, I guess if there's no more questions or no one wants to ask something, then we're gonna see each other again in, I think, about an hour, right? When is the baking? At 4.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yes.
at 4 o'clock.
Cool. So at 4 o'clock we continue this whole thing. We're gonna bake some amarettis with Kat, and we're gonna enjoy some cool tunes and some dancing together with our baking. Thank you so much for joining, and we, as always, we leave this Zoom call open, so if you still have questions you can just stay and otherwise leave, and we see you in a bit. It's always the same one. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.